geography is destiny. For China, it is a story of immense bounty and of profound vulnerability. Within its heartland, the Earth has bestowed an incredible gift, allowing a population to swell to nearly 1.4 billion souls. The story of this nation begins, as it must, with the Yellow River. In the crucible of its vast floodplain, one of the most fertile tracts of land on the planet, a civilization took root. This rich soil, spreading across the entirety of eastern China, was perfectly suited for agriculture. This agricultural miracle was and remains the lifeblood of the nation. The climate, warm and wet, allows for a practice known as double cropping. Once the primary harvest of rice is gathered in June and July, a second, slightly smaller crop can be planted and cultivated by October. This single technique increases the yield by an astonishing 25%, allowing more food to be drawn from the same parcel of land. To understand its significance, consider Europe, whose empires were largely built on wheat, a crop that yields 4 million calories per acre. Rice, by contrast, produces 11 million. Here, in the shimmering paddies, lies the mathematical certainty of China's immense population. But the land that gives also takes away. The geography that feeds the interior leaves its frontiers exposed. To the south, China shares a border with 3 nations, Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar. These are not the timeless works of mountains or rivers. They are scars of human conflict, arbitrary lines drawn by war. Vietnam's was etched by the Sino-French War. Laos's, a consequence of the turmoil that engulfed the region. Myanmar's, the result of a border war in the 1960s. These are not insignificant neighbors. Combined, they command a military of nearly 1 million active personnel, facing China's just over 2 million. Any conflict here would be no simple conquest. While China holds the technological edge, its southern neighbors possess a formidable home field advantage. Theirs is a world of dense, unforgiving jungle, one of the most challenging environments for modern warfare. It is a terrain that swallows armies, where the pace of mechanized legions slows to a grueling crawl. The long shadow of the Vietnam War serves as a stark reminder of this truth. With no great natural barrier to protect its southern flank, the path for an invading force into China is paradoxically far easier than the path out. And this is but one frontier. Elsewhere, other tensions simmer. The long, complex relationship between China and India is a testament to the fact that shared borders do not guarantee shared purpose. In the grand tapestry of geopolitics, the gifts of the land are constant, but the friendship of nations is a far more fragile and unpredictable thing. In the cold calculus of great powers, geography is destiny, and on the roof of the world, one vast, unforgiving territory has become the ultimate strategic prize. This is Tibet. Historically, its own empire, it was absorbed by China within the last 300 years. Its people, ethnically distinct from the Han Chinese of the East, inhabit a land of staggering emptiness. Less than 1% of China's population lives here, scattered across a plateau that accounts for nearly 13% of the country's entire area. More people reside within the inner four districts of Beijing than in the entirety of Tibet. This desolation is not a weakness, it is a weapon. In the logic of geopolitics, a power vacuum here is an impossibility. If China did not rule Tibet, India would, not through formal annexation perhaps, but through overwhelming economic and cultural dominance. An independent Tibet simply lacks the power to resist its colossal neighbors. For Beijing, an Indian-influenced Tibet is an existential threat. The plateau is the ultimate buffer zone. It is China's natural fortress, extending its border to the formidable barrier of the Himalayas. This unpopulated expanse, lacking the infrastructure for a large invading army, provides a geographical shield between the Indian subcontinent and the densely populated heartland of China. But that landscape is now being systematically re-engineered. The world's highest railroad now snakes across the plains. Highways are etched into the mountainsides. A large airport has appeared in Yingqi, just miles from the Indian border. In the near term, these projects are designed to integrate Tibet, to bind it irrevocably to the mainland. The long-term goal is more profound. Having failed to win the hearts and minds of the native population, Beijing can instead change who lives there. Hundreds of thousands of Han Chinese have moved into Tibet, altering its demographic fabric. After all, a buffer zone is only useful if its inhabitants see an approaching army as an invasion, not a liberation. Yet beyond the military high ground, there is a more fundamental resource at stake: water. From the Tibetan glaciers, the lifeblood of a nation flows. The Yellow and Yangtze rivers, China's two longest arteries, both draw their water from this plateau. To relinquish control of Tibet would be to place the country's water supply and thus its food security in foreign hands, a vulnerability no government could ever accept. Had nature drawn its map differently, had a significant mountain range risen to separate Tibet from eastern China, its history might have remained its own. But on the roof of the world, the fate of a people is written not in their beliefs, but in the unforgiving logic of the land itself. To the south, the colossal ramparts of the mountains provide a near impenetrable barrier, a geographical fact that has shaped the nation's destiny for millennia. To the north, a different kind of fortress, the vast, silent emptiness of Mongolia. This is a land of desolate beauty, an enormous and sparsely populated buffer state. Here, the Gobi Desert serves as a silent guardian. Any modern land-based army attempting to cross this terrain would find its supply lines stretched to the breaking point, its advance announced long before it ever reached the Chinese border. And beyond this wilderness, only one other neighbor exists: Russia. For now, a partner in military and economic affairs, rendering the northern frontier a zone of quiet confidence, secure as long as the alliance holds. But a nation's security is not forged on land alone. China turns east to the vast expanse of the Pacific. And what should be its greatest natural defense, the ocean, has become its most profound vulnerability. For just beyond its shores lies the architecture of another global power. The United States maintains a formidable military presence, a strategic chain of steel and vigilance stretching from bases in South Korea and Japan down to Guam. Allied with Taiwan and holding influence with nations from Singapore to Malaysia, America possesses the capacity to draw a maritime curtain across China's access to the world. And Beijing knows this. It is a strategic reality that has driven one of the most ambitious engineering projects in modern history. Across the South China Sea, a torrent of time, energy, and political capital has been poured into raising artificial islands from the waves, fortifying them with military installations. It is a determined push for sovereignty, an attempt to forge a gateway to the deep Pacific that no foreign power can close. Yet, in this grand strategic gambit, a bitter irony emerges. The very actions designed to secure China's future are souring its relations with the neighbors it may one day desperately need. The Philippines, a nation whose alliance with the United States has not always been seamless, could have been won over. Instead, disputes over these newly claimed waters have driven a wedge, potentially closing one door to the Pacific, just as China seeks to pry another one open. The stakes could not be higher. The nation's entire economy relies on the ceaseless flow of exports leaving its ports and the vital importation of food for its enormous population. To sever these maritime arteries is to threaten economic ruin. Without jobs, without food, the very stability of the regime could be challenged by its own people. For centuries, China's ambition was continental, its gaze fixed inward, content to be the dominant power in its own region. It has only recently been forced to look outward to the blue water. In its quest to become a global power, it has discovered that the same ocean that promises greatness can also become a cage. A stark reminder that for any great power, the true test of strength lies not in the territory it can hold, but in the unforgiving waters it must navigate. For centuries, its gaze was turned inward, a vast empire that, unlike its European rivals, possessed no significant navy to project its power across the globe. It sought no dominion beyond the shores of Asia. But a seismic shift has occurred. China has grown so immense, so populous, that its own lands can no longer contain its appetite. The foundational policy of self-sufficiency in food, a cornerstone of domestic strategy for decades, has been eclipsed by the sheer scale of its economic ascent. And so, its gaze has turned outward toward a new frontier, Africa, a continent that has, in a sense, become China's China, the vast resource base for the workshop of the world. Enormous sums of state-backed capital have poured into the continent, a torrent of investment some describe as a new form of colonialism. Chinese corporations have acquired immense tracts of land to mine for minerals, to drill for oil, and to grow the food that can no longer be sourced at home. This is the great paradox of its modern power. China now imports more food and oil than it exports. While a testament to its staggering development, it is also an admission of dependence, a reliance on foreign powers that places a nation, so often at odds with the world, in a position of profound vulnerability. Its geography is a story of two faces. It possesses some of the most favorable terrain in the world, a fertile heartland that allowed it to nurture the largest population on Earth. But as this power expands, that same geography reveals its constraints. To the south and east, a chain of nations, many of whom would likely align with Western powers in a conflict. To the west and north, a vast and unforgiving expanse lacking the infrastructure to offer support in a time of war. Formal war remains a distant shadow held at bay by the chilling calculus of nuclear deterrence. But the fundamental truth remains. The very geography that forged a superpower now defines its greatest limitations. A giant, bound by the lands and seas that surround it, forever wrestling with the delicate balance between ambition and vulnerability.